Okay, which of you guys is the most observant? What do you see wrong with this picture? Well, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with this picture. I swapped out one of the shock absorbers earlier on because when I was welding some parts on, I melted the bushing on the one that is the mate to this. See that? These are the same length. If I hold them back there, they are. And I had another pair, so I just grabbed the other one, thinking that they were all the same. And obviously they are not all the same. And so yeah, these are the original ones, the short ones. I'll have to go back in my videos and check and see. I still might be able to use the longer ones. In either case, I'm going to have to paint another one. And in the case of this one, I'm going to have to replace the bushing that got burned up. And I only have half of that bushing left. They were two-part bushings, as you can see. But they got egg-shaped because I didn't take it off when I was welding. That wasn't the last time I welded this. This was the first time I welded it. Yeah, so we'll have to go back to the drawing board on that one for a little bit. Here are our spring perch hangers, all painted. They don't go there. They're just there to keep them up off the ground, keep them safe, you know. So we'll cover this back up for now until I can do my homework. And we'll take you back and show you something else that we've got done. Now I got to finish unpacking some of it back here so you can see what we did. You saw the shocks and the sprockets being painted, and you saw the idler pulley being painted, and this is the position of this one here. I would rather have it mounted down below the spring and pushing up on it, but this is the way it's going to be because the position of it, it would have been high enough. I would either had to stretch this chain more, which I could have done, but it would have been up too high, or yeah, anyway, this is the way it's going to be for now. We'll see what happens when we actually get it running, you know. And here's our shock absorbers all mounted in place. Yep, both sides are done. And you had seen this mounted the other day, but you didn't see the spring on it. And this is the spring tensioner that goes for the rear spring, the rear chain that goes from this sprocket back to the rear axle, which will be that sprocket right down there. Yep. So yeah, that's what we got done. A little bit yesterday and a little bit today. And I didn't have a lot of time yesterday, and I don't have a lot of time today, so I thought I would get my shock absorbers put back together and get them hung up on here, and I'm pretty happy with that. They look pretty good, I think. And yeah, I took the lights back out of the sockets because they can't be finally mounted until I have them wired up, and I'm not going to do that until everything else is pretty much done, you know. Once the body is mounted in place, then I'll have to be wiring the dashboard, hooking stuff up on the chassis to the dashboard. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So that's where we're at. I have my front springs. I had wire wheeled them a little bit, didn't get them as clean as I wanted. And then I tried sandblasting them, and I still couldn't get them as clean as I wanted. And so they have been soaking in vinegar down in my basement for the last couple, 3-4 days. And I'm going down there and see if how they've come out. And if they've come out okay, of course it'll take a little more wire wheeling to get them finally done. But we'll get them painted up and we'll be able to hang them up on the front. I've already determined the color of my front spring. The front spring is going to be black, and it bolts into these 4 holes here, 2 here and 2 over there. Yep. So that's where we're headed with that. So until I give you another update, and I might get another short clip to put on showing you what I did with the springs. I've been brainstorming over here, and I'm thinking maybe we're going to end up polishing this piece up and putting that on there. We'll see. I have another piece just like this one, but by the time I get it hogged out to fit over this shaft, I'm not sure that it would work out too well. I'll show you what it looked like before I took the spring off of it. I think it has something to do with tea, I'm not sure. But yeah, this one hasn't been cleaned and polished yet, you know. So I suppose I could even put it in there and leave it in there just with the spring on it. But I'm concerned that with that spinning around, it might sling that spring off of there, you know what I'm saying? Even though it would look cool. Could have left it on that one up there, except it was just a little bit too tight in here. So that's what I'm thinking about. Maybe we'll do that. We'll see. I kept wiping up this stuff that was dripping on my mirror. And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And I thought, well, maybe it's coming out of the transmission, and no, it's... Everything over there is nice and dry. And is it coming out of the transfer box? No, everything's dry there. And then I decided I was going to wipe down the inside of my frame in here, because I'm going to be putting some Teflon down in there, don't you know? Because I have this self-adhesive Teflon tape that I bought a long time ago, and I used it on my rip guide on my table saw, so nice and slick. And it started staining this stuff because it was soaking the oil up. I guess it's not that piece. Guess it, oh yeah, this piece here, see that? It was soaking the oil up in there. Well, as it turns out, I'm going to have to drain the oil back out of my motor. It's leaking right out of this, between this brass fitting. See that? Leaking out between the brass fitting and my shutoff valve. Not a good seal. Teflon tape didn't do the job. And it's leaking bad enough. Get a paper towel to wipe my fingers here. It's leaking bad enough that it's filled up this paper towel already, and I'm going to have to replace that again. So that means I'm going to have to be doing some major cleaning down in there once I get my leak fixed. So we're going to have to use our shutoff valve before we intended. We're going to have to set up a bucket down here to collect the oil and drain the oil out of it and take this apart. And I think what I will do is I will, instead of using Teflon tape in there, I'll use regular thread sealant, you know what I'm saying? And that should seal it up just nicely. It's not leaking back where the brass goes to the brass. That's nice and dry still. It's where this goes into here to that adapter. All right then. You know, I'm glad we found it now and it didn't spring up after the fact, you know, so we'll get that taken care of. Down here in my deep sink now, and as you can see, there's still a fair amount of rust after these been sitting for a while, and it's the crusty rust that you're seeing. You can see a lot of the dirt and rust that came off. Actually, there wasn't any dirt left on. All the dirt was gone. This is just more rust coming off. It's better than it was, but I'm going to take it out now and run it on the wire wheel. See if I can get the rest of this rust off, and then we're going to put it in some metal etching primer and go from there. I have my roll bar down here. It's in primer, and I have put some Bondo on some of the nastier weld joints. I ground out the welds, and but there are a few holes here and there, so I filled them in. Got a lot more sanding to do on it before it's ready to be painted, but we're not going to do that right away because that's more of a cosmetic thing. It's a safety thing, yep, but it doesn't contribute to the way it runs, and that's what we're focusing on at the moment, getting it running and up on 4 wheels. So hang on to your hats. Well, you can see the wire wheel gets more of it off. This is what it looked like before I started wire wheeling, but you can see the black stuff down in here that it has not gotten off yet. So I'm thinking maybe I'm going to try my hamburger wheel, as some people call it. We'll see what happens. Even the polycarbonate wheel, that thing there, we call the hamburger wheel, some people do, that hasn't taken it all off. I'm sure it's not going to be a major issue, but I sure would like to get it all off. You know what I'm saying? You can see it's pretty crusty and built up pretty thick. Maybe I can chip at it with a hammer. Worst comes to worst, I'm going to take my flapper disc and see what that'll do for us. Well, this is after using wire wheel after coming out of the see, the first thing I did is going all the way back to the beginning. I used a wire wheel first, and then I sandblasted, not all of the, oh yeah, I sandblasted all of these pieces. This is the smallest piece, by the way, the top leaf. And I wasn't happy with that. I tried wire wheeling again, so finally I put it in the pickling solution of vinegar. This is the top side. This is the best side of all of the leaves. And you can still see, after sandblasting it again, you can still see that there's some rust down in the holes that I haven't been able to get out. So, and I tried picking at them, and that didn't seem to help much. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to etch it with, use metal etching primer on it. And will it focus? Here we go. I use my metal etching primer on it. We'll let her go. This side will be between leaves anyway. And it is, after all, a goofy cart, and it is not a show car, as nice as I hope it will be. Okay, so I decided that I wouldn't use metal etching primer, mainly because I didn't have a good nozzle for it. But this is fastest dry, strongest finish, superior corrosion protection, direct to metal. So this is what we're using. I don't get paid by these paint companies. This is just the paint I'm using. So we'll see how it works out. We've got our first coat on, and it's not dry yet, obviously. It's still shiny. It will be satin when it's done, which will help to bury some of the pock marks and stuff. Yep, so on to the next. One of the things you need to remember about this front spring, and one of the reasons why I'm not worried about it being pockmarked, is it's a testimony to its age. This spring is likely well over 100 years old. This was originally two sides to one spring. It was an elliptical spring, and it literally was a buggy spring. It was a seat spring off of a buckboard from back in the day. Thanks to my friend Larry Sugar, who donated it to the Goofy Cart project. So we have a little bit of history to go along with our project.